Hi, I'm Senior Chief Musician Bill Mulligan from the United States Navy Band in Washington, D.C. I play in one of the specialty units of the Navy Band, the Commodore's Jazz Ensemble, and I am here today to tell you why I love playing the saxophone in a jazz band. In the Commodores, my primary instrument is this one, the alto saxophone. Now, one of the things that I love the most about the saxophone is that it's just such an expressive instrument. That little melody I just played, it comes from one of the very first jazz solos I ever learned when I was probably about your age. And when you play a solo with your jazz band, you can often get a little bit creative with the melody. You can play around the melody, you can improvise a little, and really make that song your own. And there are some stylistic things that jazz saxophone players might do to make the instrument even more expressive. One that I love to do is to bend up into some of the notes. I'll play that same melody and hopefully you'll hear what I mean. You might even sometimes hear people growl through the saxophone. And if you put all of those things together, you might get something like this. Now, one of the other things that I love about playing saxophone in a jazz band is you might get the opportunity to learn and play some other woodwind instruments. In fact, it's very unusual that I would go on stage with the Commodores with just my alto. I often have a collection of other woodwinds with me. One that I play a lot is this, the Soprano Saxophone. It looks different from the other saxophones because it's straight, but it actually uses the very same fingerings, and it sounds kind of like this. Now, in addition to those saxophones, I will often play the clarinet when I'm playing with the Commodores. Now, the clarinet, like the saxophone, has been a popular instrument in jazz from the very beginning, from early jazz that came out of New Orleans all the way up to today. But the clarinet probably did have its heyday during the big band era, the swing music that they made in the 1930s and 40s. And you've probably heard some of the names like Duke Ellington, Artie Shaw, Benny Goodman, Glenn Miller. All of those gentlemen led big bands that featured the clarinet a lot as a melodic instrument. And what's great is a lot of today's big bands, including the Commodores, still play that music. So you might have heard something like this. And finally today, an instrument that I like to play with the jazz band is the flute. The flute is very popular in big band music that people are writing today. It's also very common to find it in Latin jazz. There's a very strong Latin influence on jazz music. And in particular, there's a genre that I love to play the flute, where I love to play the flute, and that is music called bossa nova, which comes from Brazil. And it sounds kind of like this. So if you play in your school jazz band, whether it's on saxophone, clarinet, flute, or any combination of those, I certainly hope you enjoy making music as much as I do. Thanks a lot for listening.